It's me, Dax, also known as Nicole DeBoer. You are listening to Random Trek.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your fearful captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my brave and intrepid first officer, Commander Brennan, the Mystical Mar. Brennan, how do you feel about cloning?
We'll get into that.
Yeah, but that's the least of this episode's problems.
Yes.
Today, we are taking a look at the much hated in the Trek universe, Season 2, Episode 18 of Star Trek The Next Generation, Up the Long Ladder. So earlier this year, we took a look at the double feature Fairhaven episodes from Voyager, and stereotypes weren't terrible. They weren't, the best, but they weren't terrible, and there was some earnestness to them, and I really liked it.
Yes.
This is not that.
No.
This is a horrible, horrible stereotype that actually only takes up a small piece of the episode, but it's kind of what it's remembered for. Yeah, what did you think going into this one, Brennan?
Well, I've seen this episode before a few times, and it goes all over the place. It really does. It goes from silly, slightly comical, offensive stereotypes all the way to body horror and big ethical questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This does not know what it wants to be. I didn't know what I was watching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's wow. So I'll give you the long and short of this. The Enterprise is answering a distress signal from a human colony on the planet Bringloid 5, which is having severe solar flares from its star. And this is endangering it. They are from the crew of the SS Mariposa that was launched from Earth hundreds of years ago. So in the what I'm going to call the C plot of this episode.
Oh boy.
Worf collapses on the bridge of the Enterprise. He regains consciousness in sick bay, and Dr. Pulaski tells him he's got the measles, or at least Klingon measles. And he wants his privacy. So Pulaski helps him out. And later in the episode, which they end this very quickly, Worf comes in with this Klingon tea ceremony, which, by the way, you and I always love a little bit of Klingon culture, or a lot of Klingon culture.
Oh, yes.
But this was actually kind of nice. I like the interaction between Pulaski and Worf.
Yeah.
And the Klingon tea ceremony. It's very, and I love that she said, Worf, you're a poet. And Worf does a little Klingon poetry, and it's kind of neat. And that ends that C plot faster than it started. I don't know why it's there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I like it, but it makes no sense. Ladies and gentlemen,
I think you could say that about a lot of this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the highlight of this episode. Everything else is low.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they beam up the Brinloidy. And just for reference here, yes, these are the Irish stereotyped creations that were done for this episode. They're human, but they're very Irish, like 19th century, early rural 20th century Irish.
Yeah, the people who were launched in the ship belonged to sort of a cultural movement that advocated a more agrarian lifestyle.
But they were very split on it.
Yes.
They were, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes.
And actually Bringloid, and forgive my Gaelic. Bringloid is actually an Irish word for dream. Okay.
Yeah,
anyway,
it says you and I are both Irish in ancestry, so
yeah. But
You'd think we'd have better pronunciation.
I don't speak Gaelic. I've never mastered
Neither
it.
do I, no.
I've tried, but anyway.
Mhm.
Point is, they beam up the members of the Brinloidy colony and meet their leader, Danilo Odell,
Yes.
and his very, very, sorry to say, she's hot-tempered, but also very hot daughter, Brenna.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
as suckers.
short-tongued Irish girl.
Yeah, but she's beautiful.
Mhm.
And Riker
Mhm.
notices this.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. Uh, anyway, so the idea for these guys here is that they need to be moved. They need to be moved safely because the colony is no longer safe due to the solar flares.
Yeah.
But Odell says, "Hey, Picard, we'll do everything we can. We're sorry, but they're so backwards, and everything that happens and they ask is just so absurd. They've got farm animals in the cargo bay. They're trying to start fires to cook from. They're making poutine, not poutine. Poutine is a Canadian dish.
Yes.
Poutine, which is basically Irish moonshine. No other way to put it.
Yep.
In the back of the cargo bay.
Yep. And Worth gets involved a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Introduces him what I think is a Klingon ale beverage. He likes it. But anyway, they just come off as be backwoods. 100%, like they're non-intelligent. At least that's how it's shown. The smartest thing is that they let the children go to school with the Enterprise children. Although, again, I think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Very bad idea. Not
Yes.
educating the kids is a bad idea. I remember an episode with an Enterprise crew member who was 5 years old. I think he was 5 years old, maybe 6. No, I take that back. He was 10. Anyway, 10-year-old studying calculus. You got to study your calculus. I'm like, what? Calculus who?
Yeah.
So I don't think moving these kids was the right idea, but okay. So they do it. But Odell informs Picard, he says, "Hey, do you know what happened to the other colony?" So half of them split away. What happened is the agrarian society decides to settle. And then the more technologically, scientifically advanced group goes off and finds another planet. But unfortunately, a mishap happens and they're forced to crash land on the planet. And almost everything they had didn't survive except their technology. And was it 5 crew members?
5 people.
But
Yeah.
we'll get to that. So they managed to track them down. This is the Mariposa colony, and it's about a half a light year away. It's not that far. The colony's prime minister, Walter Granger, is very happy to see them. And so Worf beams down with Riker beams down with Worf and Pulaski. And they've got very advanced technology, but they quickly notice that there are lots of twins and triplets and quadruplets. What's going on here? And Pulaski quickly figures out they're a colony of clones.
Mm-hmm.
And so only 5 people survived. And so in order to survive, they've had to clone over and over and over again. But replicative fading has started to kick in. And that is basically where problems with the genome creep in when you do a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And they're dying out. And in a few generations, they're just going to be nothing. So the Mariposans ask, hey, Enterprise crew, can we get an infusion of tissue? We just need some healthy tissue samples. Then we can create new clones. And then, but the Enterprise crew does not like this idea. As Riker said, one Will Riker is unique, as a very unique individual, but 100, 1,000, he couldn't live with that. Little does he know about Thomas.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah.
We'll get there one day. So they say, no. Okay, can you help us fix our equipment at least? And they're like, well, I guess, yeah, we can do that. So in that process, though, they trick Pulaski and Riker and stun them and knock them out and steal samples to begin cloning. They go back to the Enterprise, having their memories wiped, not realizing what happened. And they quickly discover that they had tissue samples stolen from them. They beam down to the cloning facility and find that the clones are already being made. And I gotta say, that is the fastest cloning technique I have ever seen in science fiction history.
Yes.
And I've seen Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
It was fast. So they see these things being built, and I gotta say, what they do in a level of cruelty, they set their phasers to kill and vaporize the clone.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that in a minute. We're gonna talk about that.
Oh, yes, we are.
But the Mariposans say, look, I'm sorry, but you gave us no choice. And Picard's like, I don't know what to do here. They need help. And they quickly all realize as the crew, wait a second. They need an infusion of DNA. And the Brinloidi could use help in education. Let's bring the Brinloidi and the Mariposans together again. But the Mariposans do not they only reproduce by cloning. In fact, the word they used, traditional sexual reproduction, is repugnant. He said that word like 3 times. It's repugnant, which, by the way, is now going to be a spelling word for some of my students when we get back from Thanksgiving break. I was like, repugnant. That's a good word to put on the list. Anyway, vocabulary lessons from Captain Ingle. But they eventually agree to it on the terms that every Brinloidi and Mariposan woman will need to have 3 husbands, and every man from both sides will need to have 3 wives to create a diverse enough genetic stock. So now,
talk about this. Oh, yes.
Now the Enterprise crew is encouraging polygamy. Okay, let's add that to the list to talk about.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. And they merge and the episode ends. I don't see the purpose of this episode. Like, there's no lesson or overall theme here that makes any sense. Did you find anything?
No, but there's stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. So where do you want to start?
I'm going to start with the elephant in the room, the cloning thing.
Okay.
The murder of the clones.
I cannot believe they murdered them.
Yeah, I would describe that as murder.
Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing. When you clone, they clone it, you are creating a new life form. That is what it is. And I am actually a proponent of cloning technology. I'm not saying I need a Captain Ingle clone.
Oh boy.
But the technology that can be used in cloning could be very beneficial to help create healthy organs.
A clone of you, wouldn't that be interesting?
We don't need a clone of Bay. We do not need a clone of Bay. Anyway, but I believe that cloning technology has its places. But long story short, when science fiction talks about cloning, it's cloning an individual person.
Yep.
100%. And so in my mind, that was a living, breathing being, although quickly created. I don't know how they did that.
Yes.
And it was vaporized.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you just committed abortion. Kind of did.
Essentially.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you thinking, Tom? Riker?
Unlike the abortion debate, this is dealing with a being that is fully grown and alive in some fashion.
Yeah. I mean,
we can debate about that,
it's the thing about cloning here from a science fiction standpoint, people most of the time are like, well, it's stealing from me. I'm like, this, are you really only the makeup of your genetic combination, or are you more than that? Is your life and your personality and everything about you subject to your experiences? And that's what makes you different. Ergo, Will Riker and Thomas Riker. Once that the transport beam, split them up, they were completely different individuals.
Yeah.
They might have had a shared past, but their presents and futures were completely different. So it's a little ridiculous to me to commit murder here when you could have done something with this, but that's what they chose to do. I don't know how.
It's the Tuvix situation.
Yeah, I don't. Except there really felt like, for me, in the Tuvix situation, I could see both sides, but for me, I would have kept Tuvix. We discussed that, but it made sense to me. But I could see both sides.
Yeah.
Here, they did. It was like, all right, well, there was no discussion. There was no, what do we do? Riker killed them. Riker committed double murder.
Yeah.
And nobody batted an eye. Pulaski, and there we go. Pulaski becomes a hypocrite at this point. If a doctor is supposed to do no harm, you just did harm.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, there is the ethical debate about whether or not they should have been cloned, which the answer is no, because it was against their will.
Because then you're talking
about... It was
about...
against their will. So.
Right, you're talking about something that, in essence, could be equated to rape.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
I get that. I absolutely get that. But again, a child was created as a result of that. And now we hit the moral conundrum. Was it right in that case to abort that because you didn't? And I say abort, you ended a life. Was it right? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, this is one of those. The Star Trek always comments on moral questions.
Right.
But there was no questioning of this.
Mm-hmm.
The episode did it and moved on.
There should have been a discussion.
Yeah,
and
there
I
should
would
have been an
appreciated
ethical discussion.
Yeah. But there was none.
And there was none. Yeah.
It was and so, I don't...
Now, if there had been an ethical discussion, then it would be, I think, interesting and something we could get into.
Mm-hmm.
But because Riker just, without any thought, pulls out his phaser and kills these things.
It
really, just feels wrong.
What really gets me too is I want to blame the writing, but this was written by Melinda Snodgrass. Melinda Snodgrass, if you don't know, is in charge of a couple of very important Star Trek episodes, including The Measure of a Man.
Yes.
Where ethical questions came up all day long. Pen Pals. The episode Pen Pals, another great Star Trek episode with ethical questions. The Ensigns of Command, another one that I really like.
Yeah.
These are great episodes. And then this one.
Yeah, this is a step down.
This is like, it's got to be an anomaly of some kind.
Well, it's such a strange episode because one, it's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And two, there is moral things, or should I say immoral things, that they do that they never question.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how I felt about that part of the story.
I did absolutely. Now, let's hit these Bryn Lloydie.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. First of all, I am so sorry to Ireland. And I'm a big fan of 19th century Irish, ideals, small towns, and I love that idea of the rural community, and there's a beauty to it. There's a romanticism that was set out a lot in 19th century literature. So I'll admit I'm biased. But it is a stereotype.
Yes, and
it is a stereotype.
And suffice to say, Colin Meaney does not like this episode.
He does not.
In fact, I think he hates this episode.
Yeah. Colmini absolutely has been on record about this one.
Because he's
uh,
Irish and he would know.
yeah. Um, it does not work. Now, here's where my guilty pleasure is, and again,
Yeah, I have a guilty pleasure feeling for
it's
this episode
it,
too.
it's the romanticism I think that comes from that era of Ireland and the music, and it touches a little
And the
bit, and I'm
short-tongued Irish lady.
okay. Riker and her,
Oh boy. Oh my word.
Riker and Brenna.
It
Where did that come from?
yes, this is during the Riker
Riker,
as sort of a Captain Kirk type character.
which we acknowledged last week, was not really Kirk's MO.
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
according to the
That's
way
true.
we remember it. It really
It's
isn't.
sort of a Mandela effect thing.
Yeah, he did sometimes. Yes,
Yeah, oh yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes.
But no, this was just so like he was horned up from her from the start. I'm like,
And you could
dude, this
argue
is
she was
creepy.
too.
A little bit, yeah.
Little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then she becomes objectified.
That's true. That's true.
You know, when she go, and by the way, that was his quarters. He took her to his quarters.
Push her feet, quote unquote.
How presumptive are you?
Yeah.
You have a ship that has just over 1,100 people on it, but enough to store thousands of people. You have extra rooms. You're telling me you couldn't get her quarters on her own, let her go off on her own. No, you took her to your place.
Yes.
And then, even though she consented, she went a little Riker at that moment. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yes,
like,
and the dialogue was hilariously bad.
oh, it was awful.
The
It was like
pickup lines were just awful.
a bad pulp romance novel.
Yes,
In fact,
exactly.
there's the point where he kisses her, put Riker's hair a little longer in like a Fabio look. I've seen that book cover.
Oh my gosh, yes.
This is awful. And does it have any impact on the story whatsoever?
Nope.
Not a thing. Nothing. It would have been one thing if some sort of relationship developed and built out of that, and story-wise, it still would have been awfully creepy, but it would have been something. It would have been there for a reason. This had no reason other than, hey, she's pretty, let's do something.
Yes, and like I said, the pickup lines were terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. Absolutely awful. And the worst part is that the A plot, B plot, and C plot actually have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah,
And it really
yeah.
feels like three different ideas, and they just threw them together from a dartboard and let them go.
And then the whole thing at the end about setting up a polygamous society. I
Okay.
somehow do not think that the Federation would like that idea.
I'm not going to judge other people's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in polygamy.
Nor do
not.
I.
I believe in monogamy.
Yes.
But I know there are groups and people out there who say, you know what, they're happier for that way. I don't see how, but if they are, great for them.
Yeah, I mean we're not throwing shame on like Middle Eastern cultures.
No, great for them. And for the sake of survival, let's think about this for a second. You and I, as well, I'll call ourselves biblical scholars. We are.
Yes.
Those early days with Adam and Eve, and those early days, I often wonder how much people had to do to populate the world.
It's true.
You know, they would have had to. Absolutely have had to. It doesn't state a lot of that in the Bible, but I'm like, the math ain't mathin'. Somebody had to have a couple of wives here.
And there may have been other people we don't know. You know, that's yeah.
Right. I get all that. So, but for me, I'm not judging it, but it's just like, I guess I am judging it.
It's hard to imagine the Federation condoning that.
Well, see, and
But
here's the
then
problem.
again, Dr. Pulaski said But the
Pula-
Federation might not like it.
Pulaski is a good example, but let's retcon ahead to 2001 and Dr. Phlox.
Mm.
How many wives does he have?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that's true. The Denobulans.
Denobulans are polygamous. And when his second wife, I think it was his second wife, came aboard the ship, she was attracted to Trip
Yes,
and was like,
transporting with
hey,
Trip the whole
Trip. And
time.
Trip was like, no, 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 I don't, no, no, don't do this. And yet Phlox was like, oh, you lucky dog, you got the good one. I'm like, what is this?
Yes.
But so I
Well,
don't think the Federation would mind it.
No.
Only because the Denobulans didn't exist yet. We didn't get Denobulans until 2001. But if we're to assume timeline and the Federation is all the same, then okay. Because I'm sure Denobula eventually joined the Federation.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they were okay with it, but why they didn't think of it? Maybe they needed a Denobulan crew member to figure this out. There we go. Let's retcon it. Old Dr. Phlox.
Yes.
John Billingsley, would you like to be written into a really bad episode?
It's John Billingsley. He's awesome.
Oh my gosh. I'm connecting Next Generation to Enterprise. What madness have we gone into?
Yes, that's the thing about prequels. They kind of confuse things.
And there are deleted scenes for this that I'm like, why are there deleted scenes? There's one I have not seen them, but Riker going back to the bridge after his encounter with Miss Odell.
Encounter a third point?
I can't. I just can't. There's a joke there. I feel
Yeah,
so
no,
bad. But
no. We're trying to keep it PG.
I know, but I'm just like, it's Riker. It's early Riker. There's an alternate scene of Granger describing Mariposan history. A scene of Donnie Odell telling about the colonies founding, so we get more backstory. And Data wanting a scene where Data wants to study the combined colony, and Worf actually gives us some of that Klingon poetry. Some Klingon poetry.
Klingon love poetry.
I would have absolutely loved that, but so the writer, Miss Snodgrass, says so this episode was intended to be a commentary about immigration, because she wasn't a fan of the American policy at the time. She wanted to be something that says something the outsiders you think are so smelly and wrong-colored, they can bring enormous benefits to your society because they bring life and energy. That's what she was going for. But Maurice O'Hurley, who is a major Irishman and leads the St. Patrick's Day parade, felt a little different. So when I was describing to him what I wanted to do, I was trying to come up with an analogy, and I said it was a little like a little village of Irish tinkerers, and he loved it so much he made me make them Irish tinkerers. I said, okay, and that's how it came about. So Mr. Hurley got involved here and kind of messed with her message. But I still feel like, blaming it on the producers or the showrunner isn't a good idea here.
Yeah, and that message didn't really come through.
I see where she's coming from. I get it. And the idea in the end was said perfect. That theme is said by Deanna, where she says the Brinloidi have the workforce and the drive, and the Mariposans have the technical knowledge and maturity. It's a perfect match. Okay, I get that. That's your whole point. I understand. Thank you. It still makes no sense that we had to summarize everything in one line by the pretty much the only one of only two lines that Deanna says in the entire thing.
It's a messy episode, and it's just it just is wrong in so many places.
Yeah.
Whether it be the stereotypes, whether it be the decision to murder the clones, it's just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I do enjoy a little bit the bring Lloydie parts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I like Daniel Adele, but the rest of the episode, nah.
So Snodgrass does go on to talk about the criticisms about it. I got enormous flack from the Right to Life coalition because they destroyed the clones. As I said, they thought I was condoning abortion. In fact, I did put a line in Riker's mouth that was very pro-choice, and the Right to Life coalition went crazy. He says, I told you that you can't clone me, and you did it against my will, and I have the right to have control over my own body. That's my feeling, and it was my soapbox, and it was one I got to get on. I was supported by Maurice Hurley all the way, but obviously it didn't come out that way.
It's tricky when you deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It really is.
Ronald D. Moore called it embarrassing, terrible beyond terrible.
I would agree with the embarrassing. I wouldn't call this the most terrible episode.
No. Either way, this is not something that is looked at positively.
No, it isn't.
Anyway, there is nothing really redeeming in this episode. And while I understand Snodgrass's ideas, I see the seed of those ideas. There's no water of time. There's nothing to germinate that or to grow it. There's nothing. I don't understand the point of this episode. I love the Bryn Lloydie for my own personal. I just love the Irish.
Yeah.
I do.
Even though it's horrendously stereotyped.
It is horrendously, and I admit that. I admit that. I would never go to Ireland now expecting to see that. That's stupid.
No.
And yes, we also objectified our guest lady today.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I get it. Yes. But that's why she was put there too. Not okay, but that's what they did. And, it gets better.
Yeah, season 1 and 2 are rough.
That's all I can say for TNG is it does get better eventually. The next episode, actually, just as an example, is Manhunt with Lwaxana. And a lot of people don't like the Lwaxana episodes. I love them as just comedic fare.
And that's a fun episode. Yeah.
No, and you can bounce back from that. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's got Dixon Hill and stuff, so it's a fun episode.
But when you compare night and day, there was no consistency this season.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be until the third season that things started to get better when Mr. Hurley left. So, final thoughts.
You can skip this.
Yeah, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Do not. Oh, it's so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
And yet to think it's not the worst.
No. I still feel that, easily, there are 3 episodes off the top of my head in TNG that are just awful, terrible, no good. Do not watch them. They are bad. They should be just destroyed. But for, posterity's sake, we also kept Spock's brain. So,
It's true.
Yes. There's a season 1 episode specifically that I'm thinking of that is just awful. I think you might think the same one I am. The one with Tasha and her combat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that one.
Pretend that one doesn't exist.
Which, by the way, I think suffers from some of the same problems we're talking about with the Irish here. We didn't learn our lesson. We did not. Yeah, skip this one, guys. Don't hurt yourselves.
Yes.
You know what? Cleanse your palate. Go watch Star Trek 2. It'll make you feel better.
Yes.
All right. Next week it is Thanksgiving week. Or well, by the time it'll be released, it'll be right after Thanksgiving week. But
Yes.
our movie of the month is going to be Blade Runner. Blade Runner.
Yes.
I cannot wait. It's going to be an interesting, and we are working on a good guest, a really good guest. But before I announce what our Deep Space Nine episode will be, there was an interesting release this week that I got a chance to watch that surprised me and carries on a name in Star Trek tradition that I'm very happy to have watched. A 10-minute short was released this week in conjunction with Paramount. It was not made by Paramount, but they gave their blessings and everything. This is actually the fourth in this line, I believe, called Unification. And in this sees the official return of one James Tiberius Kirk.
Oh, yes.
And we formally get to connect some information that was given in Star Trek Discovery with this idea of Captain Kirk. And I think at some point we may do a nice little short bonus trek where I have you watch this. It's not really long, but it's really
Seen
good.
it.
Oh, you have seen it? We should probably review it, like genuinely.
I'd have to rewatch it again just to see all the details.
There are some things involved here, but he does come back. Although it's his face, his voice, but his body is also played by someone our Star Wars expert knows a lot about. Did you know this? Did you know this?
No, I didn't know this.
The body of Captain Kirk in this short is played by Sam Witwer. How cool.
I met twice.
Yeah, it works. I'm like, okay, I'll play with it. But it's really good. We'll have to talk about it. But it was released this week, and it's been getting a lot of positive buzz.
Yeah.
For the return of Captain Kirk.
Yep.
I'm really happy.
And a few other characters.
Yeah, but I don't want to spoil it until we get to watch it. Or we get to look at it. But we may do that as just a nice little bonus sometime this holiday. Just a little short episode. Yep. But we have that going on. So randomizer for when we go into December.
Yep.
We have Deep Space Nine. All right. Wheel of Morality, turn. Please don't give us another bad episode. Oh, it's being nice to us.
I thought it was being evil to us.
Season 6, episode 19, In the Pale Moonlight.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a good one.
Oh, one of the best of Deep Space Nine.
Speaking of moral and ethical fun.
I can live with it. I can live with it.
Mm-hmm.
I can live. I love. Oh, we're gonna get into that. That's a good choice. Thank you, randomizer. Brennan, where can the people find you?
Well, you can still find me on X at Brennan Mystical. But you can also find me on Blue Sky, Brennan Mar. Threads and Instagram at Brennan Blue. And on YouTube at Page Turners. They were not. Also on Apple and...
You can find me at Twitch and Twitter at Ingle1984. As always, we end every episode. Qapla', and live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.